Hello, Greg. Thanks for being here. We're talking about lead conversion, right? We want to be good stewards of the leads we're generating. We're spending marketing dollars in an all-on-X clinic. The phone's ringing and people are calling in, but they're not showing up for appointments. So what a waste of money and frustration. The doctor's invested in this marketing company and the phone's ringing, but people are not showing up. Why don't you first just highlight for us what are the common pitfalls or problems that are occurring when that phone is answered as to why people aren't coming into the practice and, engaging in treatment?
Yeah, leads are coming in, right? Whether it's through a form fill, that survey, or the phones are ringing, any way that it's happening, the leads are coming in from some type of marketing apparatus. The challenge is that patients are getting scheduled, but they're not showing up. Wrong patients are in the chair gobbling up the time on the schedule. So you're busy, but not productive. So this is where that middle piece is the biggest challenge, which is how do you actually convert the right leads, into consultations that show up to give you an opportunity for swings at the plate in All on X.
All right, well, let's dive in. Maybe highlight what are some of the common things that go wrong, right? Well, how we don't pre-qualify correctly, or we're not dialoguing, or maybe we don't have the right person on the phone with the mentality of, hey, this is a lead and this is not just a random patient calling, this is a lead calling. And there's a different mindset to cultivate that conversation and to qualify that conversation. What are the common pitfalls you see happening?
Well, let's start super generic, Rob. Okay, let's just have a real conversation. Everybody talks about speed to lead. How fast can you get to that lead that comes in? Because we know when somebody has the inspiration to fill out a form or make a phone call, right? On the GP side of the practice, right? 35% of calls go unanswered. Sure, we've got that metric. Or if they fill out a form, that speed to lead and getting back to them, right? Because they have the inspiration, they've actually reached out, you got to get to them. Well, yes, that is true. And that is a thing, right? We know that to be true. Naira, who heads up my lead call department, she's a great coach, who's been doing it for years, teaches me things, makes fun of some of the things that I say. This is absolutely fact. When you're competing against some of the big box stores, some of the DSOs, some of the groups, or even some of the emerging groups or individual clinics that have call centers, right? That's a critical element that they look at. How fast are you getting back? Because you're competing with your marketing dollars, and then you're competing with your personnel. So yes, 100% speed to lead is critically important. One of the greater challenges, though, is when you have team members that aren't specifically trained in All on X.
This episode is brought to you by Rebel Crown. Are your dental crowns seated in minutes with flush margins and personal one-on-one service? If not, it's your time to rebel. The Rebel Crown is designed by your personal technician who you can call or text anytime. Milled with premium Harvest Nano-Zirconia, manufactured here in the USA with a 1-week turnaround time. Learn more at rebel3d.com. That's REBEL 3D.com.
They'll treat a phone call how they've always treated phone calls in a dental practice, just like they would for a new patient coming through the hygiene chair. Name, rank, serial number, and insurance, right? That phone call lasting about a couple of minutes, right? It's really just fill a slot on the schedule. Where is there an opening? Does it match with their availability, the patient? Put them together. That's really all there is to it. When you're talking All on X, you're talking about making an emotional connection with the patient so there's some type of attachment to the practice. Now, I know there's other strategies of get a deposit, get a credit card, and some specialists out there absolutely can garner that, right? You need to pay for your consultation. It's not really a strategy that we found at G&A Consulting that really works best, because if you do make that emotional connection with the patient, it really is almost like a pre-consultation that's happening on the phone. And that's really what we found to be most effective with all of the practices across the country that we're working with. And there really is a formula. And we happen to have a trademark on the formula because we know it works, because this liaison piece is what's solving the challenge of, oh, the leads aren't any good anymore, which sometimes they're trash. And, oh, you know what? They don't have any money when they come in. Well, This is true too. But when you have a mountain of leads that you're paying for, one, being able to filter quickly to the ones you should be having the conversation for and identifying them like we do, right? Buyers, researchers, and tire kickers. You've got to do that very quickly. And that takes
Hmm.
skill and that takes training.
For sure, like, the traditional patients decided, I'm coming into the office for X, a cleaning or a root canal or whatever. The all on X patient probably hasn't decided, past tense, that they're coming into the office for treatment, right? They're one of those three buckets. Maybe they have. My guess would be that's a smaller percentage of the market. And it's probably more researching and tire kicking that makes up a big percentage of those leads. I wanted to reference the speed to lead thing. Alex Hormozy talked about HubSpot doing research on 30-minute callback to lead versus 5-minute callback to lead, meaning from the moment the lead signs up, if you can call them within 5 minutes versus calling them within 30 minutes. 30 minutes sounds fast, but the 5-minute speed to lead was 100 times more effective in reaching the lead, just getting them to answer the phone. To
Isn't that a
me,
crazy stat? 100 times more effective. I
mind-blowing.
read that same thing. 100, and that's 100 times more effective of just getting in touch with them. That's connection rate because we track
Totally.
that as well, right? If your connection rate isn't 60% or higher, then you're falling behind. And when I'm talking about connection rate, I'm saying, do you engage with conversation with that lead that came through? And if
Mm.
you're doing even a minimum spend, $5,000-$6,000 a month on pay per click, right? So on Meta or on Google, if your connection rate is below 50%, which means you don't have a meaningful conversation, even if it's through text, phone calls better, but through text, conversation. If it's below 50%, how you cannot say that you're actually handling your leads well.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
have to get there. It is a must. And we can start talking about all the tools that are available, the assistance that's available. There's so many things. And I know tech stack and it's getting out of control and everything, but there's so many helpers and there's so much automation that can give the assist. And I'm not talking about the auto text. Thanks for reaching out to us. Somebody on our team is going to review your information. Like that doesn't count as a connection. Okay.
No.
That's simply a response back. That's an auto response back. Right. So let's make sure that we're differentiating and using language that's similar because we can all get better at it. And that's what we find with clients before we start working with them during our discovery process. It's okay, so how serious are you about upping your game? Because our sweet spot are those that are doing 2 to 5, 3 to 8 arches a month because they've already got some basics in place. They just really need better systems in place because they've already made that commitment. And if you're just starting at All on X, like learn from others of mistakes that they've made because push your chips in the table or keep them like on the sideline, right? Don't like dabble and throw a chip in here or there. It's kind of like at the Vegas table, right? Don't just
Yeah.
sit there and get andied out of the poker tournament. And for anybody who knows like poker tournaments, you know what I'm talking
Yep.
about, right? Because
Yep.
you'll get small and big blind right out of the game. And it'll be frustrating for you. And we see that too. And we've helped practices just like that. And so I love that, you referenced Harmozy, who talks about this, that the difference between 5 and 30 minutes, and we actually know some stats too, the difference between 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And you might think this is insane, 30 seconds. There's instant data that's available. I mean, there's somebody who should be dedicated working on if your spend on ads, if you think about it this way, if you're spending on ads a minimum of $5,000 a month just on All on X. We're not talking your total marketing spend, right? On the GP side, if you're a general dentist, $5,000 or more, minimum 5,000. And then you've got your ad management fee. And somebody should be actually managing your ads, keywords, 3 to 5 ads at any one time, rotating through
Yeah.
A and B testing, all of that. You're in probably for about $7,500 a month. Are you telling me that you're not willing to make the investment to have someone who's actually dedicated to doing this? Sure, they can have other tasks going in the background, but that's primarily responsible for this in particular. Because when you look at the CAC, the customer acquisition cost, and the ROAS, the return on ad spend, you put those two together. If out of that ad spend that you're not getting 3 new patients, at least 2 new patients, which should equal about 3 arches and about $60,000 in return. $60,000 opportunity that you're not willing to pay somebody to be dedicated to this, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing, Rob? It just when you look at the numbers, because oh, I want 10x. We're going to get 10x. We'll get you 30 qualified patients with the just run, right? Let's be
Yeah.
realistic. Let's crawl, walk, run, and then look at what your pipeline fills up and how do you then nurture all that pipeline. That's really what's most important when we look at it. And it's the liaison. It's this middle piece of the pie. It's not the closing and it's not the marketing. It's right smack dab in the middle. And that's your lead call, your setter, whatever you want to call them. That liaison is the biggest piece in the entire process when it comes to the patient experience and actually doing all on X cases.
This episode is brought to you by DES. DES is your one-stop shop for abutment solutions fully compatible with leading OEM implant systems. From tie bases and MUAs to the innovative direct-to-MUA screws and the new DES lock. Every solution is designed to streamline your workflow without compromising quality. Reduce chair time, cut costs, and restore with confidence. Do it with DES. Learn more at des-usa.com. That's DESS-USA.com. So we totally agree. We need to have a dedicated resource, someone that's specially trained and they have this mentality of when that phone rings, I know how to answer it. I know how to engage. So let's talk through this, the training, the coaching that you give to this, we'll call it the lead caller, right? Or what are some of the best practices that you're training them up to qualify and to schedule and to get that patient to come in?
Well, first, let me just say this is not an area God bless all the people who sit in this role and do this role day in and day out, because it takes a certain type of human being. Not something that I would like to do on a consistent basis. It's a tough role. If you think about it, you're reaching out at any one point and you might get one callback out of 25 to 30 phone calls that you're making. And if you think about it, the type of person you're looking for, you've got 25 to 30 conversations that you've started, and any one of them can respond back at any moment, and you're trying to engage them in conversation. So you probably have 3 or 4 to 5 to 7 dialogues going at any one time while
Yeah,
making
Joe,
outbound calls,
Sally,
while
Jane.
inside.
Yeah, keeping it all straight.
So you need someone, who might, be a little bit on the, ADHD side, right? Somebody who like really can organize and multitask in the truest of senses, but giving them the tools that are necessary to be successful at it. And from our side, that's where I was talking about our registered trademark sales process, right? It's very straightforward. It's E.A.Z, and the E is empathy. Empathy is one of those things that it's kind of like communication. Everybody believes that it's happening, and most often it's not. Right? Empathy compared to sympathy. And Naira, who leads up my department, she's amazing and with the examples she gives, because she really gets into the psychology of patients and teaches more on this, which it's interesting when clients first come on board and it's like, no. Like, you got to be patient. Like, you have to understand the psychology of patients once you actually get that connection, because empathy, there really are 7 steps to empathic listening. And one of them is the biggest one that I struggle with, which is be comfortable with silence.
Yep.
Asking a question and allowing the other person to digest an answer. Now, when I'm speaking from stages around the country in front of doctors and team and doing team development, it's a skill that I've had to continually work on,
Yep.
right? Not past tense, haven't mastered it, right? Continually work on, right? Pause for dramatic effect, if you will, because it allows them to process the information that's being shared. It's the same when it comes to in clinic and a consultation, because we know what the process is so well. We know what's coming next. And so we tend to overcomplicate something that's very simple, which is creating space for someone, especially in such a fast-paced society that we live in. So that's first and foremost. The second, which is so critically important, is the A, which is assurance, right? You can't really say, we're the best, come here. Well, you can, but it's more effective when you simply acknowledge what the patient has said. When they ask a question, and there's really two main questions that a patient will ask. One, how much is it? And
Yep.
two, will my insurance cover it? It's the two questions that patients mostly know how to ask. And so being able to handle those two questions in a very professional way without saying, well, it kind of depends. So I can't really give you a price over the phone because that's not really handling it well. It doesn't exude confidence. And the person on the other end is just going to get really, really frustrated. Doesn't matter what category they fall into. If they're a buyer and they are literally like thinking, I've been to 2 consultations before, there's a way to handle that, right? And it's a very savvy way, and again, Nayeda would laugh if she heard me saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I know she's probably gonna listen, right? And there's a way to talk about, well, what have they shared with you before? Because of course it will matter whether they need, and for now I'm gonna like get a little nerdy and geeky and clinical on you, right? It matters if they need quad zygomas or if they're a pretty straightforward case or fill in the blank. Right. You know,
Sure.
if they have a severely atrophic mandible, I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into it. So certainly there is variable in range. So just spitting out a number, oh, it's going to be 22,000, click. We hear it all the time. And that's why we do what call audits, right? We listen to their calls, we do coaching over it, and we send it back on a weekly basis so they can actually hear themselves. And then we do weekly trainings on it as well, which is
Uh,
super effective. Yeah,
on
go
this
ahead.
price note, do you teach, give an estimated range or like a good, better, best? Like it could be this or could be this or could be this, but we need you to come in so that we can, talk through your specific case. So at least you're giving them a framework of like 3 options. Do you guys teach that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And there's a couple of depends in there, right? And I'm not talking about the adult diaper, right? So it depends on the client themselves, depends on the circumstance that they're working in. And just like you said, if they only offer fix and they're not offering overdentures, there's a client of ours that just
100%.
doesn't want to do SNAP. They just don't want to do them. And they certainly don't want to do dentures. And if they do, then they've got a partner, company that literally is like 2 doors down from where they're located and they'll transfer them over there. They'll send the patient over there. So it does depend in that scenario. The other is not talking about, well, just like every car ad you've ever seen on television, yeah, there still are ads on television, boys and girls, right? Before streaming days took over, and some people still
Yep.
do have like network TV. I don't know that you ever see that it says, for this brand new Mercedes Benz that it's $79,900. And notice I listed it out that way. If you ever heard it quoted, it'd be 79.9, but you'd never hear that, right? You'd hear it as low as 469 a month for highly qualified buyers. Now, you're not going to say for highly qualified buyers, of course, but there are ways to give ranges and to be able to share. And at times that is appropriate. Working with clients, we work through what they would have preference on. And it's not a simple cookie cutter of 10-10-10 method, right? Every client is different. And we test out what's most comfortable because we believe frameworks, not scripts, that scripts don't work, but frameworks do. And that's how
Yeah.
we're able to, within our system, be able to customize for each of our clients, whether it's a single location practice all the way up to a 110 location DSO that we're working with now. So it really does vary because we want it to sound like them, not like G&A consulting. And that's what's most critically important. But I love the question for sure, because I think it's critically important that people find their lane and also that it sounds like something that a patient calling would identify with and not
Hmm.
immediately hang up. So that's critically important.
What if I'm a practice that says, well, I don't want to give pricing out at all, and I just want to tell people, we don't know till we see you.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that a,
that's the
is that a bad
cascade. Yeah,
idea?
100%. That's the cascade effect, right? Talking about making sure they're opening up and talking about themselves, tell us about your current dental condition and cascading them down and saying, I'm not the clinical, without being confrontational, without being too Greg, right? Saying, I'm not the clinical person. I would love to be able to share with you. And then those practices, because we've got a couple of those out of all those we're working with across the country, then it becomes like this massive gap in knowledge. And if they're pushed, and we call it the one, it's like 1, 2, 3, right? At least twice they've got to be able to work them beyond that numbers. And if it's a matter of, well, if I don't get a number, I'm not going to come in. You can probably imagine which category that person falls into. buyer researcher type tire kicker, you know, more than likely, because if they literally are just looking for a number, think about what the end outcome would be if they actually did come into the practice and actually did end up moving forward. And so certainly there's going to be some missed opportunity, but it's going to be so slim compared to those. Again, going back to the opening, whether it's the right individuals actually that show up, those two pieces are critically important if you're going to build a successful all on X, either as an adjunct to your general dentistry practice or full blown, because we have a few of those as well that really are main thrust all on X practices that lead 80 to 90% of their revenue in their practices currently.
Awesome. So, all right, let's review. Empathy. I'm a huge believer in empathy. I believe fundamentally you have to understand someone's pain. What problem do they have? Pain, fear do they have that I can then solve for them? And if I am perceived by the patient that I am a solution to their problem and their pain. And then what's the A?
Yep.
Was it
So
acceptance?
we'll continue on with A. I'm glad we got back to it, and I was going to circle back. It's assurance, and then underneath
Assurance.
it are three little A's, right? It's acknowledging what the patient asked, the two questions typically you get, but any other question, and making sure you acknowledge the question that they asked, answering that question, which we got to the second little A, right? You do answer the question. It might not be how much is it 22,000 click, right? How much is that? Great. Well, you know, it can vary depending on your current dental condition. Can we talk a little bit about that? And we'll certainly get to what the cost or investment would be in order to get you back to that brand new smile. There's an answer. And then ask another question. Can you share with me a little bit about your current dental condition? You know, tell me what's going on with your mouth there, Rob. What's happening, right?
Yep.
How many teeth you got dangling? You know, do you have summer teeth? Some are here, some aren't. Obviously, it's not what we teach. That's why I don't coach. I coach the
Yes.
coaches. I don't coach the clients.
Yeah.
And so those are the three little A's. So it's empathy. The big A is assurance. Underneath it, acknowledge, answer, ask another question to drive the conversation forward. And then the Z in the E.A.Z is zeal. I have a lot of zeal. It's a fun word, right? It's talking with a little more energy than the other person on the line. Often when you get these patients and patients in general, they'll have a very subdued energy, and talking with a little more energy with them
Yep.
will start to elevate their energy. And by the end of the conversation, we can literally track that from the very beginning of a conversation through a 6 to 7, 8 minute conversation, and the energy level at the end of a patient and how much it elevates. When
Hmm.
done well and skillfully, obviously not blow them away.
Yep.
It really is a successful journey of a phone call, because outcomes, sure, if you book a consultation, they show up, that's all well and good. We actually track what's the revenue compared to how many the connection rate and those types of metrics, because ultimately it's revenue for a practice that we're looking at. Even for this liaison lead call role, that's critically important.
Yeah, the zeal's a good one. I like to think of it as like humble confidence that I have a level of humility about me, but I am confident that I can help you, patient. Right? Let's have some dialogue. Let me gather some information, and then if I can gather that information, we can do this or this or this, and you can trust me. I can help you, and I can be confident as the person talking that we're a good solution for you. We can take care of you. We can help you restore the smile back that you've always wanted. It is important to exude that confidence that we can take care of you. I think the worst thing you can tell a patient is, I don't know. Well, how much does it cost? I don't know. And you qualify the questions, and let me gather more information and I'll tell you. But if you're just like, well, I don't know until you come in, I mean, gosh, there's a lot more information you could get, and you have that humility and that confidence to then get them to a point where the person on the phone is like, I know we can take care of you. Is Wednesday good or is Friday better? Right? You have those strategies for getting them in, I'm sure. So after Zeal, what are we looking to do? Book a day and a time and get them in?
Yeah,
that's like the win.
absolutely. It is. Yeah, ultimately, it's if they're a patient that we do want in the practice, that's the ideal, right? Identifying that this is a patient that has a high likelihood of showing up. And that's something that we do as well in our weekly scorecards as we listen to phone calls, as we're listening to our clients and how they're doing. We actually rate before, if it's toward the end of the week, and that's when we typically do the scorecards, we'll actually rate low, medium, or high likelihood of showing if they're for
Mm.
the following week. And we've gotten some down to some pretty detailed single digit accuracy of whether it is a low, medium, high of likelihood of showing up just based on phone calls and how we've scored their phone calls. And
So then
one of the features.
do you double book the lows? Like, did you play any of those games in the schedule?
We do for our busier practices. We encourage staggering though, rather than doing two in the same time slot. So for example, rather than putting two consultations at 9 a.m., it's 9, 9:30 and offsetting if they do an hour for consultations, or those that have two consultation rooms and have two treatment coordinators of doing at the every quarter hour and staggering that way. For me and for what we've found and for clients of ours that are most successful, it doesn't make sense to have two consultations coming the exact same time, although they never end up showing up at the same time. Some are early,
Yeah,
some are late. However, on the schedule, it makes a lot more sense to have a stagger happening. And then there's others where you run that, third column, if you will. And we all, and I say that with a little sarcasm, there's always that third column of there's no way this person's going to show up, but we're going to put them on there because they booked and we want to make sure they get the sequencing of the auto
sure.
reminders. And then, of course, the big piece, like you said, the ultimate goal is to then book the consultation, but also asking the magic question of, great, and who else will be joining you for your consultation? So many of those working in the lead call position either are afraid or don't ask that question. And we know why, because when you ask that question, they'll lose a small percentage of those that had intent to book, but we also know that those are
Because they're
also the high
single?
likelihood of no show. It's the high
Yeah,
likelihood of no show. And that question is all, well, wait, I have to bring somebody. And simply talking about the fact that it is a lot of information that'll be provided for you with our customized care, with our doctor and our team. And we want to make sure that you walk away with as much information as possible that you're able to retain. Most of our patients find that it's super helpful to be able to have somebody with, whether that's a spouse, a friend, a neighbor, a cousin, an uncle, somebody who can also be there and help you with answering questions while you're here, as well as be able to take away as much information as possible to make an informed decision. Does that make sense? And asking
totally.
questions like that just to get them to say, oh, yeah, that does make sense, rather than saying you need to bring a financially interested party, because that's the ultimate, right? Who else is financially interested in this process, right? Bring your husband or bring your wife if you got to get them to say yeah, right? That's a
Totally.
little like aggressive. And some do. Some will actually be a little more assertive and say, who else will be making this decision with you? Bring that person. We'll rebook for when they can. They don't want the back and forth. They want to avoid the treatment coordinators that are complaining. Well, they had to go talk to their husband. Did you ask him on the call? Let's listen to the call. That confrontational nature we find isn't as helpful, but simply saying who else will be joining you with a process like this, because it is so personal, the vast majority are going to bring the other financially interested party, if there is
Totally.
one, to a consultation like this.
And
So it's really a subtle way of saying, bring the money.
is there data that shows if they bring the financial interested party, the odds of closing or accepting treatment goes up significantly?
Yeah, so we have some data that has like when there's two people that actually come in compared to a single person that comes in, but not so much of if there's a financially interested party that isn't present. But we're starting to gather some of that data because I think that would be super interesting, because it's hard to tell when they say, "Oh,
Hmm.
I need to go talk to my spouse," because sometimes they really don't need to. It's a smokescreen, and we teach that too, even though we're not talking about that lane, Rob. Don't go outside of the lane. Don't go outside of the topic. But there is a way as well, because when there's that whole, I need to talk to my spouse comment, right? Or I need to think about it when it comes to, the closer lane. And now Sarah, who leads up my department in that area, she would like slay me if I even say this, but then it's really leaning in and asking another question. It is a lot of information. So tell me what questions you have rather than, oh, no,
Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay, so let's get you back in. Yeah, you don't end that conversation. You get more curious at that point for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last question as we start to wrap up. If so, let's say we're paying the money for marketing and we get 1,000 lead calls. What would a
Ooh,
poorly run
that's a lot of money on marketing. That's a lot of
is it?
leads.
Okay, I don't know how many come in the average week or month. 100, 200? Like, what's an average that you see lead calls coming? This episode is brought to you by Rebel Crown. Are your dental crowns seated in minutes with flush margins and personal one-on-one service? If not, it's your time to rebel. The Rebel Crown is designed by your personal technician who you can call or text anytime. Milled with premium harvest nanozirconia, manufactured here in the USA with a 1-week turnaround time. Learn more at rebel3d.com. That's REBEL 3D.com.
Yeah, we see about 150 to 200 for our lower end. Yeah, there are some that are that are chucking up like close to 1,000, but that's a
All
lot.
right,
So that's a big
we'll take
number. I
the.
don't want to scare all your listening audience by saying 1,000 leads and be like,
I
we
just picked
need
a
more
random number.
leads. Yeah,
Let
that's a good random number. It's high.
Let's say we got 100 leads that come in. A poorly run lead caller would convert about how many to patient appointments versus a well trained and thoughtful lead caller following the framework. Uh, what is sort of like the delta that you kind of see on average, like a poorly run lead conversion versus a well run lead conversion?
Oh yeah, those percentages of converted into consultations, right?
Yeah,
Appointments, and then those that actually show up can vary significantly. I'll give you an example. A client we just engaged with, they just came on board with us. Their no-show rate was over 80%. So
oof,
of all of these consultations being booked, that means less than 20% of them were actually showing up for their appointments. Now, to say this is beyond ridiculous would be an understatement. And this is their own internal team. So what we do and we offer as well to be able to get some expert help in this area, because 50% is kind of like a plug your nose tolerable depending on what your philosophy is on leads, right? How restrictive is your survey? How restrictive is your funnel? Is it top, middle, bottom of funnel? All of that. The differentiator between those that actually show up for a consultation, or better yet, the amount of revenue multiple between a good lead caller that is like, I won't even say top of the game because there's some that are just off the charts, but I would just say like an above average compared to somebody who's below average, right? So I would say middle scale of 1 to 10, a 7 compared to a 3, because often we get like 3s. That's when they come to
yeah.
us and say, man, we're just not converting like our leads, and we can take them to a 7 typically. If it's the right person, they're open, they're coachable within 3 to 6 months, right? Just depending on how quickly they learn, how open they are to systems, changing things in their pipeline, who they're using for marketing, how responsive the marketing company, all these variables, right? But to take them from like on a scale of 1 to 10, from a 3 to a 7, the revenue, nothing else changes. Closers don't change, no coaching for treatment coordinators, marketing doesn't change. Nothing on marketing, not even the feedback to the marketing, simply working in the lead call lane. And we've had this with over a dozen clients
Hmm.
in the last year, just this lane, no other input, even though we'd prefer the 360 because we have a lot of clients that do the 360. It's a 4.5 multiple on revenue, just by simply elevating this liaison lead call. Because I've got to
Hmm.
tell you, Rob, we had our team over there at, at the Neodent Full Arch Symposium in October, that happened in Vegas. And I asked them, I said, look, there's the 3 lanes that we do, right? The capture, marketing, convert, which is the lead call that we're talking about here today, and the close, which is treatment coordinator. And so many are focusing on the outsides, right? We'll help you to close more cases, treatment coordinator, close. Or they'll focus on the marketing, right? Cost per click, so many leads coming in and all that. But they're really this wasteland, right, in this middle of converting these leads. And so I asked my team, I said, I simply had this pad of paper and I said, all the conversations you have, I simply want you to put a tick mark of wherever they were, and they can be multiple. Like if you talked about more than one area, about what is, just like you open the show, what is the problem that we're solving today? Like what is the problem that the doctor came up and talked to you about today? And it was 4-to-1 lead call compared to any of the other two columns. So it's not the marketing and
Mm.
it's not closing. It's the leads. It's how are you converting those leads? How are you handling those leads and getting them to show up? It's all about that middle piece. And so we've really been hyper focused on that for the last 6-8 months because it's critically important. And we know we've got a pretty good solution for it. And our clients are experiencing that. And then when you compare that to the 360 of communicating with a marketing company that knows how to make changes and listen, and then you put the gasoline on the fire and you work with those closers and the communication apparatus happens between all three, that's where we're seeing the clients getting like the 10, 12, 15x. It's pretty amazing stuff.
That is amazing. I love hearing that. So as we wrap up, Greg, what's a call to action to reach out to you? Like I know you do a lot of consulting in the full fixed starch all in X game. How does someone connect with you? What's your engagement look like to help someone grow their practice with all in X?
Yeah, start here, right? Start with what we're talking about here today. And what I'd love to be able to do for your listening audience, Rob, is simply reach out to the show, right? Engage that way, mention the show. Visibility is everything. Understanding where you stack, where does your leads stack? Like your lead caller, what do they sound like compared to what good looks like? If you reach out to G&A Consulting. You can go onto our website. We'll have it in the show notes here, or go onto any
Yep.
social media platform and you'll find us, or me personally, and just reach out and mention the show. It's all you got to do, right? We won't put it restrictive at all. Just mention the show and let us know you want 2 free call audits. We'll listen to the
Mm.
call. We'll put it through our scorecard. We'll create a Loom video over the top of it about feedback and then scores. It's a why each of the scores for the 9 metrics were exactly what they were. That's it. Then you'll have visibility. And if you want to have a discovery call after that and talk about how we can help, great. We'll be happy to do that. But I want to be able to do that to provide some visibility, because once you see how you actually stack up and how things are going and why, it'll probably create a ton of clarity on those other 2 wings, whether it's the closing or the marketing, because that middle piece, that liaison, the lead call, the setter position, if you will, is so critically important for the amount of marketing and the amount of dollars that you're spending and the dedication and commitment you're putting into your all on X game.
Greg, thanks for being here. Always fun talking with you. I'll put your email and your website in the show notes, and then anyone out there who want to engage and get your 2 free call audits to see what you're doing good, see what maybe you're not doing so good at. And, the only way to get better is to inspect what we expect, right? One of those famous quotes, and take a look at things and have fresh eyes and grow. I love it.
Knowledge is power. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Rob.
Of course, always fun. Thanks, Greg. We'll talk soon.